Hello, welcome to another edition of Classic View from the Boundary with me, Jonathan Agnew. For the last 25 years or so, I've been the regular presenter of the feature on Test Match Special, but before me, it was very much the domain of the late, great Brian Johnston. His warmth, humour and ability to bring out the best in his guests is something that all broadcasters should learn from. Though none of us knew it at the time, August 21st, 1993 would see Brian's final View from the Boundary interview as he chatted to the comedian, actor and playwright Roy Hudd at the Oval. This interview contains every element of what made Johners so special.
My guest today is someone millions of you hear frequently on the radio in news headlines, but to me he's the last bastion, if I may use the word, of music hall.
Pardon? What was that?
Listen to my pronunciation. Bastion.
Yes, you really must. Bro.
He's a great supporter of the music hall, but also he loves cricket, which is his reason for sitting in the box here with us today. Roy Hudd. Hudders to me. Let's deal with your cricket first. Were you ever a player?
Well, I was never really a player, Brian. I did play 2 years ago. I played for our team at the Open Air Theatre Regent's Park. And I'm sending for that tie.
You started a bit late in life, didn't you?
I was. Yes,
so,
out first ball.
Primary club?
Definitely, I shall have one of those ties before. Yeah, I wore my outfit that I wore as bottom in A Midsummer Night's Dream for the batting, and we were playing the Regent's Park Police. And they didn't think that was particularly funny, so the first ball went whistling down, out. Yeah. Thank you very much.
But you have supported and watched cricket for many years.
It's many years since I've been to the Oval, because this is my team, Surrey, you know. Yeah. But I got here this morning, and what a wonderful surprise. The first person I saw when I walked in was a man, when he used to come in about, we used to say, "Here comes the question mark."
Question
and
mark?
it was Raman Summer Row, because he used to look exactly like a question mark when he walked in.
So those were the days. I mean, you supported Surrey when they were winning.
When they were terrific in those days.
Yeah.
And funny enough, I don't know if does he still run his cricket school, Alf Gover?
No, Alf sold it. No, he some time ago. But he's still alive and kicking. And,
good lad. Yeah, he gave us some great joy.
Yeah, he was a great person. But any other particular heroes of that Surrey side?
I think Stuart Surridge, of course.
A great figure, a leader.
Absolutely, you know.
Yeah.
And we saw lots of good games here. And my hero of all time, really, was Godfrey Evans, though.
No, Goddard, yes.
Wonderful character. Looked marvellous, didn't he? And couldn't he keep wicket? And couldn't he thump him about a bit?
Yeah, he'd been great on the stage, wouldn't he?
He was he was. He's a Dickensian character, isn't he?
Yeah.
Was then. Terrific stuff.
What do you think of cricket today? I mean, you follow it, do you?
I've enjoyed this like mad, isn't it? This has been our finest hour, isn't it, Brian?
Well, it has indeed. It was, mind you, it was Australia's finest hour first thing, and now we've scored, England, we mustn't say we scored 6 runs and over, which is sensational.
Well, yesterday and today, terrific. What a terrific day's cricket yesterday. It really was, wasn't it? It was a wonderful day's cricket. It had everything.
You live now up at Clappers. I mean,
Clappers, I live.
Have you always been a Londoner like that?
Yes, I live almost opposite Willis, you know. Or Willis.
Did you?
Yes, yes.
That's right. You can see him through the window. You
That's
see him.
Well, I do see him on Sunday mornings. He's very generous, you know, Bob. I see him nearly every Sunday morning when he's at home, raising his glass of Australian wine, the swine. What about that, then? It's loyal, isn't it?
Doesn't beckon you to come and share.
Never does, no, but he always raises it to me as I walk by, which is like on my way round to the pub. Yeah.
And so, how did you start? I mean, you were born...
Yes, I was, Brian.
Roughly.
He's like lightning, old Johners, isn't he?
1936 you were born. You didn't start in show business until you were 21 something.
That's right, yeah.
Butters, or was it Butlins?
Yes, I was a redcoat at Butlins.
Really?
That's right, yeah. I started at that. Did lots of shows in the Boys Club, and then in the RAF I did lots of shows as well. And then I went to Butlins as a redcoat, and I thought I was going to be a comic. We got there, and they said, well, actually, you're redcoat entertainers, which was £8 a week we got, which meant you did all the shows as well as, taking all the kids to the fair. It was an incredible way to start in the business as a summer season there. In the next chalet to me was a chap called Dave O'Marney, who was a very funny guy as a redcoat, and he eventually changed his name to Dave Allen. He was a redcoat there.
Really? Was he?
So it wasn't a bad season.
What sort of thing do you do? Do you have a double act or something then?
I did a double act with another chap, yeah. We did our sort of shows there. But as I say, most of the time it was running about, doing all the jobs.
Yeah. But I did see, because I read about you, at one time, before perhaps you were a redcoat, you were a sugar shoveler. Now, what on earth is a
Glad
sugar
you
shoveler?
said that right, bro.
It's a difficult one. You notice I took care. What is a sugar shoveler?
It was at Payne's Chocolate Factory in Croydon.
Yeah.
It was just really shoveling the sugar into the things to make the Payne's poppets. I did that. I did all sorts of things. I was a commercial artist, basically.
Yeah.
That's why I tried that. But when I went into the RAF, between me going into the RAF and leaving the RAF, I was a lettering artist,
Right.
And some swine invented Letter-a-Set, that rub-down lettering. So that was the end of my career as a commercial artist.
We can say you were lecherous, were you, at that time?
Oh,
No.
a very yes.
Did you ever go and do a sort of stand-up straight comic in the music halls? I mean, they were slipping away then. There weren't many around.
No, there weren't. I think I'm quite sort of well known for actually closing more variety theatres than anybody else in the history of show business, I think. I came in to the business really proper as half of a double act in the late 50s, of course, when all the music halls and variety theatres were closing, which was a very sad time. But I really did. I mean, we used to play them on Saturday night, and on Sunday morning they used to put the padlocks on the doors. It really was the end of variety.
Which of the great ones do you see? Because I'm lucky, I probably saw them all new. What were your
Yeah, I saw
greatest
quite a few,
heroes?
Brian, because my gran used to take me to the Croydon Empire when I was right just after the war, when I was a little boy, and so I saw lots of people there, and it was an interesting time to go to variety just after the war, because you still saw G.H. Eliot, Randolph Sutton, and Hetty King, and people like this. They were all coming to the ends of their careers, but there were lots of young performers who were just starting, like Harry Seacombe, Max Bygraves, Bruce Forsyth,
Frankie Hudd.
That's right. All those people were just beginning.
Yeah.
So it was a terrific period to be introduced to the variety theatre.
But you see, I think you know about me. I'm not so keen on the old time variety. I'm the 30s chaps. The 30s,
Well, you are,
the 40s.
Brian, because you're much younger than I am.
Right, thank you. But I was lucky to see, the Millers and the Flanagans and Allens and
That's
the
right.
Hutches and all these people.
I saw quite a few of those, because they did carry on until well into the 50s, particularly Bud Flanagan, of course, and the Crazy Gang.
Yes.
Particularly, we saw those. My gran always used to take me to the Victoria Palace because it was on the train from Croydon, East Croydon to Victoria. Just walk across the road and we used to see them. And people used to say to my gran, well, it's dreadful you taking him to see those dirty old devils up there, And she said, no, well, her great theory was, the secret was, they used to say it's all these dirty old men running about doing sketches, chasing women. And she used to say, well, the great secret is they never catch them. She was absolutely correct.
So did you ever actually meet them then at
I
that
met
time?
Bud quite a lot because I just joined the Grand Order of Water Rats when Bud was, of course, still very much an important part of it. And I remember going to see Bud at the Victoria Palace in there would have been their last show, and going backstage to see him, and being introduced to him and all this sort of stuff, which was marvellous. And he said, would you want a souvenir? And I said, yes. I'd love one. He said, here you are. And he took his straw hat off his head and gave it to me. And I said, well, what are you going to do for the second half, Mr. Flanagan? And he opened a case and he had about 500 hats in there.
Like Dickie Bird's white cap.
That's right. He knocked the top off, bent the top off, and went on and did the
Because you
second
do these
half.
marvellous and you took part in the stage show underneath the art. You do this marvellous impersonation of Bud. Is that the original straw hat, or you had other ones made?
That is the one I wore all through the West End when we did Underneath the Arches. I keep that one, but I've got a lot of other spares, but I keep that one he gave me.
What do you think was so great about Bud? Because he's my particular hero too.
I think he was the master of the revels, really, as far as as the Crazy Gang was concerned. I don't think he was particularly the funniest. I think everybody thought Monsieur Eddie Gray was the funniest and the best, But Bud had that wonderful voice. He had an aura about him.
He had a heart.
That's right.
Didn't
That's
he?
right. And the others didn't. They were all anarchists.
Oh, that's right.
But Monsieur Eddie Gray, I think, was the great hero.
Tell us one or two stories about him. There's so many.
Yeah, the Monsieur Eddie Gray. I worked on that show Underneath the Arches with Chesney Allen, who was, of course, still with us at that time, and he used to tell smashing stories about. He always thought the Monsieur was the funniest. And he used to talk about during the war, when they're going around entertaining all the troops and all this sort of stuff, and they get to one isolated RAF camp somewhere in two cars, and the policeman on the gate stopped them, and he said, "Who are you?" And Bud said, "Well, we're the Crazy Gang." He said, "Oh, really? Let's see your papers and all this, And all this argy-bargy was going on. Eddie wound down the window of the next car and said, "We have come here for the plans of the bloody bomber." So the fella said, "They're the Crazy Gang, let 'em."
He
My
played so-
favourite story of his, Brian.
So many tricks.
Well, my favourite story of his is a very sort of pro-y story, but it is my favourite. Was almost his last season. He did a summer season with Tommy Trinder. He was very old this time at the Monsieur, and he said to Trinder, he said, "Now look," he said, "I think it'd be a great help to my act." He said, "If you came on in it," he said, "and just did a gag with me," he said, "I mean, you're a big star. You know what an old." What's it he was? Yeah. He said, "You're such a big star, Tom." He said, "It'd be a great boost to my act if you came on." He said, "Well, of course, Eddie, if I can be of any help." He said, "Well, it's only a simple gag." He said, "It's a very simple one." He said, "But it would help me an awful lot in the act." And he said, "Well, what do you want to do?" He said, "You come on and you say, 'Hello, Eddie, what did you have for breakfast this morning?' I say, 'haddock.' And you say, 'Finnan.' And he says, 'No, Ficken.'" He said, "Now," and Trinder thought, well, it's not much of a gag, but all right. He said, "I'll please the old boy, help him a bit." So anyway, he said, "Well, we'll do it tonight, shall we?" So the Monsieur said, "Oh, no." He said, "I'm very old. I'm very slow at learning these lines." He said, "We'll have to practice it." So they used to rehearse every night before the show. "What did you have for breakfast today?" "Haddock." "Finnan?" "No, Ficken." So it goes on. He said, "Tonight?" He said, "No, not tonight." And they came to the second night. He said, "A big house out there tonight." And he said, "This is my big chance." He said, "When you walk on there, Tom," he said, "they'll love it." He said, "We'll do it tonight. What did you have for breakfast today?" "Haddock." "Finnan?" "No, Ficken." "Great." So Trinder's fed up with it by this time, So eventually they come to the night, and Eddie looks in the wing and says, "Now, on you come." So Trinder comes on, he says, "Hello, Eddie," big round of applause, and he said, "What did you have for breakfast today?" He said, "Cornflakes."
Collapse of Trinder.
No chance.
He was the devil, wasn't he?
Well, they were all a great lot, I worked quite a lot with Charlie Norton, as well. They
used to bash him about. I mean,
he was the butt of the jokes, wasn't he? And Charlie lived quite near me, and I lived in Streatham at that time. And the great story about Charlie was that he always used to go out every night, after
the nightclubs, didn't he?
That's right.
Loved them.
And all those awful places.
Yeah. Oh, you and I wouldn't know about it.
Wouldn't know about anything like that. So he used to go out, and they said he used to reel out of these clubs about 2 o'clock in the morning, not knowing where he was, but every taxi driver in London knew him. And they used to say, "Pick Charlie up, put him in their cab," and they'd drive him home to Streatham, and the next day they'd come round to the stage door and say, "Charlie, you owe me £3 for the taxi fare," and he'd pay it quite happily. So this was a well-known thing. So one day he's not so good, and he goes to see the doctor, and the doctor said, "Well," he said, "the main thing is what you've got to do, Charlie." He said, "You've got to get to bed early." He said, "You've got to stop drinking, and you've got to do some exercise." He said, "Now, you live right next door to Streatham Common." He said, "Get up early." He said, "Have a walk round Streatham Common. Do yourself a bit of good." So Charlie tried, and he knocked off the booze, and he went home about 3 nights on the trot, straight back to Streatham. And he gets up in the mornings. The third morning he gets up to walk around Streatham Common. It's about 7:30 in the morning. He's walking around Streatham Common, and a taxi driver pulled up and said, "Don't worry, Charlie, I'll get you home," and slung him in the back.
And his partner, Gold, the rather boring one, really, was the richest of the lot.
Well, apparently he was the richest, wasn't he?
Yes,
yeah.
he kept everything, didn't he?
That's right. Well,
But they still went back by tram.
always by tram to Streatham and Balham and all round that way. The wonderful story about Charlie was that during the war, they had a bomb on the Palladium when they were playing a regular season at the Palladium, and a bomb fell on the Palladium on the opening night of their new revue, just before, and it lodged in the roof of the Palladium. And they said, "Well, what should we do?" And George Black, who was running their shows at that time, said, "Well, look, put a piece of canvas underneath the bomb in the roof." He said, "We'll open." He said, "Nobody will ever know that it's there. It's an unexploded bomb." So they get there, they say, "Right." In the afternoon, they said, "We're going to do it." And all the band get into the pit, very, very sheepish, with this bomb above their heads. So they all get there to start to rehearse. And they're just going to start to rehearse. And all these bits of gravel fell on the drums. And they were up like one man and ran out of the theatre. And George Black said, "I looked up, and there in the top box was Charlie Norton with a bag of gravel."
Marvellous. Now, you also do a
Awful
marvellous
group.
impersonation of Billy Bennett, Almost a Gentleman.
Billy
Did
Bennett,
you ever
my
actually
great
see
hero.
him?
No, I never saw
How
him.
do you get it so good? Because I saw him a lot and you were marvellous.
You saw him a lot, did you, Brian? Yeah. Now, he was one of my great heroes, Billy Bennett. I must be absolutely honest. It was a dirty night and a dirty trick when our ship turned over in the Atlantic. Wonderful stuff.
Give them one of the monologues.
What shall I do? It was dirty night and a dirty trick when our ship turned over in the Atlantic. It was the schooner Hesperus. We lay asleep in our bunks, bound for a cruise where they don't have reviews, with a cargo of elephants' trunks. The sea was as smooth as a baby's top lip. Not even a policeman in sight, and my favourite line of the lot. And the little sardines had got into their tins and pulled down the lids for the night.
Was he the original of the Boom Boom? I mean,
Well, apparently so. That's what I
he
hear.
had the drummer and used to go Boom Boom at the end of the
That's
day.
right, yes. My other favourite one of his was Christmas Day in the Cookhouse. Do you remember that? Christmas Day in the Workhouse, famous Victorian poem, but Billy Bennett's version was all about Christmas Day in the cookhouse in the army. You know? And it was all about this army chef who'd manufactured this diabolical Christmas pudding that nobody wanted to eat. You know, and it was Christmas Day in the cookhouse. The place was clean and tidy. The soldiers were eating their pancakes. I'm a liar, that was Good Friday. Goes on. Very end. The soldier gets up and he starts calling this army chef for everything under the sun. He says, and he finally throws his curse at him, the soldier does to the chef. He said, and whatever you eat, may it always repeat. Be it soup, fish, entree, or horse duvers. May blue bottles and flies descend from the skies and use your bald head for manoeuvres.
Did he write
the
these
tag,
himself?
the tag, Brian, was, and now that I've finished my story, I just don't care what comes to pass. And as for your old Christmas pudding,
We're on the air.
put that on the shelf under glass. That's the tag.
Did he write them himself? Do you know?
I think he wrote quite a lot. And a chap called Marriott Edgar wrote quite a lot for him as well. And a pair that I was a great fan of, two musical writers called Weston and Lee. Yeah. They wrote quite a lot of stuff.
They wrote a lot of music too, didn't
Well,
they?
Weston and Lee were marvellous. They wrote everything from sort of Goodbye to When Father Papered the Parlour, you know, and all those sort of stuff.
Stanley Holloway.
That's right. They wrote a four-line verse for a song, Ron, which I've never forgotten. I think it was the funniest 4 lines I've ever heard in a song. And the song was called Epitaphs, the song. And it was all about a bloke who was so boring and fed up that whenever he got cheesed off, he used to walk round the cemetery and look at the gravestones, the inscriptions, to make him laugh, you know. And one of these says, on the very next gravestone there I saw, here lies the body of William Burke, a decent man entirely. This stone was bought from a second-hand shop, and his name's not Burke, it's Riley. Isn't that a classic?
Now, time is coming up between us. We must just get on to the greatest of them all, Miller. And you do Miller absolutely marvellous.
Yeah.
Did you ever... you saw him?
I did indeed see Max Miller very much, because my gran again was a great fan of Max's.
Yeah.
Like she was all the dirty comments. She was a fan of. What a terrible woman. But she used to take me, and people used to say, it's disgraceful you taking him to see Max Miller. She said he doesn't understand what it's all about anyway, so it doesn't matter. You know, he was one of my absolute heroes. Yeah.
Can you go into any of his routines on the air?
Well, that's the point, isn't it? Yeah, I always used to like a joke he did, because he did a lot of clean stuff.
Oh, yeah.
And people forget that. And I always liked the joke he said. Look, he said, I've got a few bob. He goes in the garage and he said, I've got a few bob. Now he said, I want something special, some special transport here. He said, what about that car over there? He said, well, that's a Rolls Royce, that. He said, that's about £10,000 a few years ago, of course. He said, well, no, he said, I can't afford that. He said, I've got a few bob, but not that much. He said, well, there's a family saloon there. He said, it's about £2,000. He said, oh, no, I can't afford that. He said, what about a motorbike there? He said, that's about 500 quid. He said, oh, no, too expensive. He said, well, there's a push bike there. He said, 25 quid. He said, no. He said, pair of roller skates. He said, a £5. He said, no, I can't afford that. He said, what's that? He said, well, that is a hoop. He said, that's a hoop. He said, you get a hoop and a stick. He said, and it's £1/crown. He said, it's not like, he said, but he said, that'll do me. He said, get me out in the country at the weekends. So he buys this hoop and he goes out into the country for the weekend, and he gets to a pub there and he thinks, I'll have a drink. So he puts the hoop in the car park, and goes in, and he comes outside and the hoop's gone. Mm-hmm. And he goes raving mad to the car park attendant. He said, what is this? He said, look, he said, I left my hoop here. He said, I've come out now. He said, now it's gone. He said, well, what are you moaning about? He said, it couldn't have cost you more than £1/crown. He said, it's not the money. He said, how am I going to get home?
That is not a typical Miller, but it's a very, very good one, isn't it?
Yes,
it's brilliant, isn't it? All the gear. Where do you get all your marvellous patterned suits and the brown and white shoes and the white Homburg?
Well, the
suits
exactly the same way, really, as Max did it. You know, his missus used to make the suits.
Well, they made out curtains or something.
Deborah's is here, so she does the suits for me. Yeah. Well, we go around Berwick Market, and find the most outrageous suit we possibly can, and that's it.
The interesting thing is, I used to go, and if you didn't tell the stories I knew, I was furious.
You were very cross.
Yeah, but isn't that a fact? It's
well,
strange.
that is the point. You get used to it. It's like a song. If you go and the person doesn't sing the song they're famous for, you get cross. But they don't tell the joke they're famous for. Well, of course, the great story about Max was, not being hauled off in the middle of the Royal Variety performance, which is the great story when he was a huge star in this country, and he went on to do the Royal Variety performance, and Jack Benny was on, I believe, that time, and they said to Jack Benny, you can do as long as you like, and they said to Max, you can do 6 minutes, and he went raving mad, which he would do, and he went on and wouldn't come off. He wouldn't.
And he went into his rather rude routine.
That's right, and went very well. I might tell you, it went very well. But he came off, and apparently Val Parnell came around and went raving mad, and said, "You'll never work for me again, Miller." And his reply was, which the amount of money varies every time the story is told. He said, "I'm sorry, you're about £25,000 too late." But of course, 6 months later, he was back at the Palladium.
Yeah. Look, you mentioned the word song then. Now, you
song.
and I.
Yeah, what about that? Now, there's a Pete Murray link, if ever I heard one thing.
Well, I possibly, and you didn't, I sang Underneath the Arches of Bud Flanagan. I've sung it with you at the Music Hall Society.
The British Music Hall
Society. Do you
Society
think we might
Christmas
risk just one chorus of Underneath the Arches?
Should we?
Why not?
Especially for our old chum Queenie Smith.
Queenie, I've had a letter from her saying you were going to be on. Queenie, if you're listening, here is the definitive Underneath the Arches.
Yes, and I want you to know, listeners, that this record is not available in any shops.
1, 2, 3. Underneath the arches, we dream our dreams away. Underneath the arches, on cobblestones we lay. Every night you'll find us tired out and worn, happy when the daylight comes creeping, heralding the dawn. Sleeping when it's raining, and sleeping when it's fine. What's above there?
Ba, ba, ba.
Trains rattling by, ba, boo, boo, ba, 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 boo. Pavement is our pillow. Does it matter what's no matter where we are today. Underneath the arches, we dream our dreams away. And
that's jazz.
And that was Roy Hudd, my guest here. Hudders, thank you very much indeed. And now we'll just return to John Inverdale on Sport on 5. But don't forget, you rejoin Radio 3 at 1:35.
A man's an animal.
Lovely, well done. Well done. Very good. I haven't heard it sound like Godfrey.
They said
I was wondering, Inverdale, I thought was going to pick up out of this. The doctor's desperate enough about following it.
Well done. Thank you, Hudders. It was good.
Everybody will
Thank you,
follow
brother.
that. Come on. What do you want to see? What do you want to see?
Well, doesn't that bring back some memories? Sadly, Roy Hudd passed away March 2020 at the age of 83, 27 years after that interview.